Hey there internets, I'm Michael and this is Toucan Play That Game with a review of Get Adler from Kappa Games. So what is it? Well, let's look at the box. We have the Union Jack in the background and some people, and it tells us it's a deduction card game. So we know it is a deduction card game, that's quite helpful. But what else do we know? Well, it is a deduction card game set in London and you're trying to figure out who Adler is. Why? Well, because Adler has stolen the secret documents and you must return them because the government don't like their agents going rogue and stealing their documents. So the way this all works is that you have 3 rounds to try and figure out who Adler is, and then you can start trying to arrest him. The way this works, well, why don't we take it to the table and I can show you in more detail. This game is broken down into 2 parts. The first part is these first 3 yellow rounds here, whereby you cannot try and arrest Adler yet. So the whole game comes down to figuring out who Adler is. So not Adler, final one has to be Adler. So this player here is Adler, and all the other players are trying to identify who Adler is in these first 3 rounds. And then they'll have 4 rounds in which to try and arrest him. So I'll explain how that all works in a minute. So the other players win if they manage to arrest Adler. Adler wins if he gets through all 7 rounds and has a secret document in hand. If he doesn't, he still loses and the other players win. The way each turn will work is first a player will draw a card. They will then play a card. So the cards that they could potentially play are all listed on the player aid. And the first one we have is the secret documents. So this is for Agent Adler only, really. He needs to collect these so he ensures he has one at the end of the game. So you might, if you're Agent Adler, throw one away, discard it to kind of disguise the fact that you're Adler. Look, I don't need documents, I'm not Agent Adler. Whereas other players will be not needing these. If you're not Adler, these serve no purpose. The next one we have is the question mark, and this is where questions come into play, and this will only be useful in the first half of the game during these yellow rounds here, the first 3 rounds, where you'll be asking who Adler is. So you'll ask a player a yes or no question. Do you have a black hat, for example? If they say no, you know they don't have a black hat. And it's just a process of elimination until you've determined who Adler is. You can also try and tell who he is by what cards he's saying. As I say, if players thrown away documents, they may not be Adler. The other types of cards that they could play is a magnifying glass. So this enables you to get an idea of what players are actually doing. You get to look at their cards. So with a magnifying glass, you'll pick one player and you'll go, let me see your cards. Oh, I see you're hoarding documents. Maybe you're Adler then. And then we've got the binoculars. And again, these are a way of gaining information. In the later half of the game, these are not so useful. So what these allow you to do is blindly take one card from a player at random, and then you give them a card back. Next, we have the arrest card. Now this will do nothing during these yellow rounds, but once we get to these blue rounds, once you think you know who Adler is, you can play an arrest card against someone. So you play this against a specific person. Obviously, at this stage, you don't know for definite who is who. But once you've played this arrest card, you're going to find out some pretty key information. First, let's take the situation where you play an arrest card. Oh, and it's not Adler. So they don't reveal, they simply say, I'm not Adler. Unfortunately, that means the person accused and the person accusing miss a turn, which when you've only got 7 turns each in the game is kind of drastic. But let's say we successfully went, let's arrest you, and it is Adler. Once Adler has been found as an attempted arrest, all other players reveal who they are. Now, there's no questioning who is who. You know who they are. You know where Adler is. You just need to hunt him down. And that's where the rest of the cards come in. So by playing an arrest card, you don't automatically arrest Adler. He has a chance to get away. He can play escape cards. Now these come with lots of different pictures, but they're different modes of transport. If he plays an escape card, he has attempted to run away. The only way to keep up with him is for one of the other players. It doesn't have to be the player who played the arrest card, just one of the other players to play a matching escape card. So it has to be the same form of transport. You couldn't, for instance, play this bus on top of this car, but you could play the car. But then how is Adler going to get away if they keep chasing him? Well, you can keep playing escape cards and matching like for like, or you could play a bomb, but bombs are very rare. If Adler plays a bomb, all heroes lose a turn. And then Adler gets away. So it would be skip back round to Adler's go. So it's very much a way for Adler to really run away with the game. Alternatively, he could play a disguise. If Adler plays a disguise, he escapes automatically. So there's nothing the heroes can do to try and catch him. Obviously, bombs and disguises are not much use to the other characters. They can just discard them or just have them in hand really to stop Adler getting them. The final thing that can happen is Adler could play a pistol, and this begins a shootout. So if Adler plays a pistol, the person who last played a card against Adler, so let's say none of these got played, and the last card played was by Constable Townsend here. He played this card, and then Adler went, right, I shoot you. Now, Constable Townsend would look at his cards and go, have I got any guns? Have I got any guns? He has got some guns. So he would play a gun in response, and then Adler would play a gun in response, and a gun in response, until either we have a draw, as we do here, at which point Adler just gets away. If, however, one player has more guns than the other, if it's the hero, Adler is dead and the game is over. If it's Adler who has the most, the hero is dead. The game continues, but that player is out of the game. You'll carry on like this until either Adler has unsuccessfully run away, so an arrest card was played, and he had no means to escape. All he had was things to give information. And then Adler was arrested and the other players win, or until you finish out the 7 rounds. Then, if Adler has a secret document in his possession, he wins. Otherwise, the rest of the players win. So that is how you play Get Adler. Well, what do I think? Let's start with the artwork. The cover says it all. This is the artwork in the game. It is that style. I don't like it. It's just not to my taste. You know, you might like it. I don't. I find it a bit drab, a bit boring. So what about the components then, if I'm not interested in the artwork? Well, the majority of the game is made up of these cards. They're okay. They could be better, could be worse. The player aids are fine, flimsy card. The tokens for the time, for marking the rounds, are good, nice quality card, I will say that. And the rules are nice and clear to understand, and they're a nice small format for flicking through, everything well laid out for referencing during play. So what about the gameplay? Well, I'm not a big fan of games that rely so heavily on social interaction. And this game wouldn't necessarily revolve so heavily on that social interaction if it wasn't so luck dependent on what cards you draw. Now, I have found that in pretty much all of my plays, Adler has ended up winning because trying to stop Adler is extremely hard. It's extremely easy to identify Adler, and the beginning of the game just feels like you're playing a really basic, boring version of Guess Who if you're lucky enough to have a question mark. And then eventually, you know, you've asked the right person the right question, and it's like, right, everyone knows that's Adler. Right, let's get Adler now. And then you're like, right, I play an arrest card. and Adler plays an escape card, and everyone goes, no, not had that out of the deck yet. And that seems to be the way this game works. It's a bit of a failing with the mechanics that the luck of the draw plays more of an impact on who will win and who will lose than any form of tactics or even that social interaction that the game is all about in trying to identify who Adler is. There's an aspect of social interaction, hand management, you know, you can use the question marks to ask questions or look at people's hands to see who's got something useful. And as Adler, you could get really unlucky and just never see a document and therefore you don't win. And yeah, it's a bit of a shame that it is an okay game. It's an interesting social deduction game, but it's just not to my taste. It's so luck heavy that it kind of just makes the game feel like it was a bit like, yeah, never stood a chance, or if you hadn't had those cards, you wouldn't have won. And it's like, yeah, it was just luck that I had those cards, and that's what it is. It is luck. So yeah, overall not a game I'm impressed with. I don't think much of the art, don't think much of the components, and the gameplay falls very flat for me. Now, if you want that kind of deduction game with a very heavy luck element, then this may well be the game for you. Now, of course, this is Toucan play that game, so the last thing I'm going to discuss is can Toucan play that game. Of course, it's social deduction, so no. And yeah, so not really any way around this. There's no people having multiple people. You cannot play two-player. There's no variant that really works. And yeah, it's not that good a game anyway, so you probably won't want to. But, you know, that's just my opinion. There are definitely people out there who will love this game, who will love the artwork, who will love the way the card interactions work, the way the luck of the draw all works. And of course, playing on that whole, you know, old-fashioned England feel will appeal to a special audience as well. Okay, I do hope that you found this video useful and interesting, and if you have, please do check out the rest of the videos on the channel, as well as subscribing to the channel and sharing it with your friends and family. And do also take a look at us on social media. You can find us on Facebook and on Twitter. And as always, thanks for watching, and bye for now.